Ben Leavitt, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Steve?
Is this the biggest thrill of your life, being on a show with me?
Without a doubt, yes, absolutely, definitely ranks number one for sure.
Yeah, that was really not convincing, but that's okay. It's all good. So how are things in Guelph, Ontario?
Can't complain here. Things are slowly starting to open up. The weather's beautiful, so there's no complaints on my end. How about in Vancouver? How is it out there?
It's been a cool summer. It's nice. I mean, it's nice out, but it hasn't gotten super hot. You guys had the huge heat wave a couple of weeks ago. I know that was just a real trial to get through. But no, here we're doing good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben, because you're a recent graduate from Guelph University, which, by the way, my daughter did her master's at. So awesome. I'm sure you know each other. But recent graduate from Guelph. So you only graduated a few years ago. Tell me about your business and about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from the University of Guelph last April. I graduated from their Bachelor of Commerce program with a major in marketing. So I run a social media agency now, and I actually started it while at school. And that's really how I got into the world of social media. Is I was in the internship program there, and every job that I was getting, because I was a marketing student, they all assumed that I'd be some social media whiz, and they were always greatly disappointed every time because there was no classes on this stuff. So about second or third year.
So because you're young, you should just intuitively understand it, right?
You see, Steve, that was their thought process. And every time they were greatly disappointed when I'm like, I was never taught this. I have no idea what you're asking for. So for about second, third year, about like the second or third kind of rough internship where they were disappointed and I was equally disappointed, I then made it my mission to become like the social media guy. I deep dove into the platforms of Instagram, YouTube, and just consumed all of it. And then, so then my last internship, I was that guy. So it worked out in the end. And then I started the agency where I now help businesses and brands best leverage social.
Well, you and I are at the opposite end of the spectrum, because they look at me and they say, you can't possibly know anything about social media.
Yeah, exactly.
You're too old. So the fact that I do kind of goes, oh, that doesn't fit. These pictures don't work. So our topic today is we're going to be talking about, we're going to lead with Instagram stories, which is, I got to tell you, it's always confused me about the value of using a tool like Instagram stories. And here's the issue I have. I'm going to start just with my biggest issue right out of the gate.
For sure.
Which is, I wonder about the effort it takes to create content that has a very, very short shelf life. It's the issue I always had with Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of was proved out right with that. I have trouble with Instagram stories, and with Facebook stories for that matter, about spending the time to create something worth watching that if you don't watch it right away, it's gone. I just that best before date thing bothers me. Can you help me out?
Yeah, no, and that's a very, very valid point, but I would actually kind of argue a little bit or challenge you on that a bit. I think that's the real opportunity, is the fact that the lifespan is so short, because that gives you so many opportunities to experiment and see what really resonates with your audience. And very similar to like maintaining a relationship in real life, the more that you speak and the more that you're present, the deeper that connection becomes. And I think that's where Instagram story holds so much value, because you can do so in a non-intrusive way and really get people to interact. And very similar to when you're in a classroom and the teacher poses a question, people are always apprehensive to put their hand up because they're worried about getting it wrong or things like that nature. Whereas the stories can be one-to-one, and you can actually start to build relationships behind the scenes, and they don't have to ask their question or put themselves out in the comment section for everybody else to see. So I think there's a ton of value in stories, and I'm a huge advocate from both the paid and organic perspective.
And we will get into the difference with the issues around paid and organic, because that is a rapidly changing landscape right now with the Instagram world. But we're following. There's a roadmap that we can follow, definitely, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the type of client, though, the type of person that's going to be using Instagram stories. The nature of this conversational nature, this the kind of the premium on capturing it while it's still fresh. Does that cater to a smaller, more intimate relationship with your social media following than some people who are looking for kind of more massive followings, the Twitters and the YouTube, where we're looking for a really big following in order to create the cash flow that we're looking for?
I think there's a place in anybody's strategy for stories, and I think they should be used for anyone. And they give you such an opportunity to develop that know, like, and trust all through your stories in real time. So I think that they should be a part of any business's strategy, tiny or massive. And then how you approach them should honestly be quite similar. You want to be organic, you want to be real. And that's what really shows people behind the scenes and there's so many opportunities to create stuff. And like you said about the issue of putting all this time and effort into creating something for a short lifespan, is you don't always have to put in a ton of effort on your story to still have impact, because you still can communicate in real time. So I think it doesn't matter what business strategy you're on, or sorry, what business you run, it's definitely something you should be a part of. And a great thing is because you can actually enhance the amount of people that are going to be exposed to your content through your stories. So Instagram only shows your stories typically to about 10% of your audience. And then it also does so on a trial basis. So the more that you can get people to interact and engage with your stories, that increases the times that you're going to show up when you post like a normal feed post or anything else in the future, because they value relationships as priority number one. And stories are an awesome way to develop those relationships with new people, because much like you said, you constantly need to be feeding the machine, but every time you're feeding it, it's going to be something different. And that may resonate with someone else who gets them to respond. And then that builds a relationship and they'll continue seeing your content moving forward.
Okay, let's move let's start out by seeing if we can, kind of put a face on the content. Talk about the actual content itself. What type of content do you think resides best within stories?
For sure. Yeah, I think it's the personal stuff. So behind the scenes, I think it's also an opportunity for you to show what you do and your expertise. And then a major thing from a business perspective is if you're not on Instagram and you're not leveraging stories, you're missing out on the opportunity for real-time testimonials, because so often when people get a great customer experience, they want to share it, and the first place they go to is their stories, and they want to tag you in it. So that's free content and easy content for you. You can click and share it to your story with one button.
So if you're a content marketer, what you're telling me, right, if I'm reading between the lines a little bit, is stories is complementary to your main content. It's like a preview, or it's a teaser for the content, which the blog post, the YouTube video, the podcast that you're creating. It's creating a little bit of energy moving into that main content. And if you focus it from that perspective, as opposed to being the content, it's not the message, it's the precursor.
Very often, yes, absolutely. And it's a way to enhance the experience for everyone else. And it doesn't need to be as polished in most cases. Obviously, the exception being if you're running paid, you definitely want to put a lot of time and thought into that. But from the organic perspective, it is that organic nature that really creates great relationships and great opportunities from stories, is exactly that. Yeah, you don't have to, it's not so strict, if that makes sense.
I've got that. So media types, do you just do what happens? Is it just whatever you have? Or do you plan, I'm going to do an Instagram story with video, I'm going to do one in this aspect ratio, I'm going to do one that's a carousel. Do you mix it up, or is it just what presents itself as an idea at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So stories are always going to be viewed in vertical format. So you want to create for the platform of how it's going to be consumed. So you always want to make sure that you're creating for a vertical viewing orientation. And then I would say you want to do a mix of both, like real time. If something happens, film, get it to go. But you can also pre-record things. And now you're able to upload videos up to your stories that were already on your camera roll. So if you think, okay, this may be better served to put on tomorrow, as long as you have it there, you can easily upload it the next day. And another thing about stories is that Instagram loves it because it gives people a reason to constantly be on the platform, which is their primary objective, because it's always ever changing. There's always people and things to check in on. So one thing you want to make sure to do is incorporate any new feature that Instagram adds to your stories and leverage that as quickly as possible, because whenever they release something new, they want to normalize it. They want to get other people using it. So they reward the early adopters with increased reach to your existing audience. So there's tons of different ways to go about it.
So
but
you can ride that newness wave.
Exactly. Yeah. So for example, say if you were to use a brand new feature. So when polls came out, normally my stories would only go to like 10% of my audience. When I started to use polls, it went to like 12 or 15. So that little incremental increase, those are now 2 to 5% people that don't typically see my stuff that now I can build a relationship with, and they may moving forward. So you definitely want to leverage that.
So when you're doing your content, when you do a content plan, do you schedule and plan for your Instagram stories, or are they happenstance and you just go, oh shoot, I haven't done an Instagram story today, I should do one?
Yes, good combination of the two. That's another great question. And I think it really depends on the type of business and what you're doing. Like as a rule of thumb, as like an Instagram marketer myself, you always want you literally always want there to be that ring around your profile picture because it gives people a reason to click. And you're constantly fighting for attention. If you don't have that, somebody else who does is getting those eyeballs. So realistically, a goal should be to have at least one a day. So there's always that ring around your profile picture. But I think a good mix of real time and then planned is always a good idea. Oftentimes, because if it is planned, you're probably going to want a little more polish on it. And it may take some editing or some forethought to actually put that together.
And that's where now, do you use a tool? Do you create your stuff in advance? Do you use a tool like InVideo to create a nice, compelling snippet of content that's as well, or do you just do it at the moment?
So I do both, actually. So if it's something for a business or definitely for paid ads, I think InVideo is the king for that, to make a very compelling advertisement very quickly and easily. And then in combination too, if you want to enhance the experience and really provide some video elements, which I think video is king. I think it will always be king. Just the level of immersion there is untouched. So I think that's definitely something that I would incorporate into the strategy, but that would be more of the stuff that's planned. And the real-time stuff would be on the go, kind of wheeling and dealing on the phone, getting what's going on at the time. So like for clients of mine, I put that accountability on them to try to challenge them to get some stuff that's real time and happening at the moment. But the stuff where I plan, it's a little more polished, and I would use InVideo all the time.
Now, what about the audio? Whenever I'm building content for the mobile platform, I have a resistance to having any dependency on audio.
Okay.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I would think you're absolutely right. Don't depend on it. But for those people that are going to consume the audio, you have it there as a complementary piece, because I think that audio can go a great long way in terms of enhancing the experience. But you're absolutely right. A lot of people go through their stories not listening to the audio. So you can do that. And then there's also triggers that you could put into the video. Like a lot of people will say, like, turn your sound on kind of thing. And that little trigger is enough to get people to do so.
Do you use like speech bubbles to give the essence of what it is you're talking about, or do you close caption your videos?
So I don't close caption my videos personally too often. I'll do like a little sound on indicator or a speech bubble, like you said. That's a great way to get people to do it. And oftentimes, if it's just me and I am speaking, the people that care are going to turn on the volume to actually hear what I have to say. So it really depends. Like if you want people to listen to the music, I think a little indicator getting people to actually turn on their volume is really powerful. But if you're speaking, a little speech bubble or simply you speaking is likely enough for them to turn on the audio.
Now, the stories kind of chain. You create a train of stories if you post multiple times.
Yeah.
What's too long and what's too short to have? You say we should have at least always one current post up.
Yeah.
Do you have a time limit that you like to keep it at?
See, Steve, that's the crazy thing, is that you'll think that it's too much and you're annoying people, but Instagram wants you to fill that with as much content as possible. And you'll find if you go a day where you put like 20 stories, you'd think that, okay, people are going to get fatigued by this. They're not going to see it. You'll find that those will be your best performing stories because you have so much. They reward you for feeding the machine. So I would never put a cap on your story limit. Like, I think that's really subjective and depends on what you're doing. So use the one as like a challenge for yourself to remain consistent and always have at least one. But in terms of a maximum, I wouldn't even put that on you, because I think that there's always benefit to have if there's value in the post or in the story post.
Now, what about creating engagement then? So you've got people watching. You've convinced me to waste a tremendous amount of time each day creating some new content that I just don't have time for. Okay, yeah. I'm on board. But now let me be a good business person.
Yep.
And rather than just entertain and engage, which is all very valuable, but we do in other platforms as well.
Of course.
I need some sort of a transactional engine.
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with links? How do we deal with calls to action? What works best in that space?
Absolutely. So I think that's probably where we would shift our strategy a little more to the paid side, depending on the size of your audience. Because as people know, and they love to talk about, Instagram does have a swipe up feature, but only when you surpass 10,000 followers, which a lot of the businesses that would be listening to this right now aren't in that boat. So the issue with that is that they don't have access to that ability to actually put the swipe up link right there to enact a call to action and direct traffic. There is one way around that, is you can put a link in a IGTV video, but it just requires another click and another change of positioning, further decreasing the amount of likelihood, or the likelihood that they're going to actually go do that. So from a paid perspective, is when you do optimize campaigns, you can easily put the swipe up link feature for any ad, regardless of the size of your following. So that's a way. Go ahead.
So when you create an ad, in Instagram stories, the ad can be persistent. It doesn't have the same time limit as your viral content. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely. So that will be running as long as you're running the campaign. So and depending on who you're targeting it to, and everybody has access to the swipe up link if you're running a campaign. So you can create any sort of campaign and use that as a CTA.
Now, if I create an Instagram story campaign, is it called an Instagram stories campaign?
So it'd be run through Facebook Ads Manager, but I love Instagram story ads because I find them to be the least expensive and the most efficient for the stuff that I've done historically. These things do change all the time, but I'm a huge fan of story ads at the moment.
Okay. Now, will then in the Instagram stories feed, will there be two Steve feeds if I run an ad, or will there only be my ad running as a feed?
So if you literally put your exact story and then you paid to promote that, your followers would still see it on yours, but the ad would be its own entity. So like they could hypothetically see it twice, but it wouldn't be from the exact same positioning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but so if I was also doing viral stories at the same time, I'm not basically suppressing my ad at that point.
No. So it would only be exposed to your existing audience, like your actual story on your page. The paid one it could be shown to your existing followers if that's how you targeted the campaign.
Oh, but you're targeting it usually to a cold audience of some sort, or
typically, typically unless it's an offer that you want to put towards a warm audience or things of that nature. But typically, it's going to be cold.
Okay, that makes, but there's always going to be a call to action. So we should think about the viral aspect of Instagram stories. Probably if you don't worry yourself, especially if we're in that under 10,000 follower range, probably you shouldn't worry too much about creating it kind of flies in the face of what we teach a little bit in social, but you shouldn't worry too much about a call to action. It's a nurturing campaign. You should be looking at it for nurturing your audience as opposed to creating activity.
Largely, you do have the resource of the link within your bio. So you could make that the call to action of getting them to go visit your bio and then use that link. Again, every step that you put into the process is going to diminish the return on that and the amount of people that convert. But you still can absolutely do that. And I think the bigger value is the nurturing element, but you absolutely could still use it to drive conversions, clicks, whatever the goal was.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense then. I mean, I can see how it fits. And I think if you take the pressure off of a tool like, and you don't say that it has to convert people but you can look at it as a nurture campaign type thing.
Yes.
That
very much so.
It makes it a lot easier. Now, do you have a defined like a format that you do? Like you also host a podcast. We didn't mention it, but you have a podcast. Yep. Is your podcast your main kind of your main focus at generating revenue for your business?
No, actually not really. It's more of it definitely brings in leads, but I'd say it's more of an opportunity to expose what we do to like a wider audience of people. So I think that it's been great of converting people who have known who we are, but not maybe had a great understanding of exactly what we do. So going into a little bit and speaking about that, I found that to be very successful, but it's more of a complementary piece. I'd say that the bigger revenue or attraction piece is more of my YouTube channel.
So walk me through the content mix. Let's say you get Steve on as a guest on your podcast. Steve's going to be a guest. So now it's 2 weeks out or whatever out, and we're going to record the podcast, and then I imagine you have a little bit of a lead time. Take me through the content mix that you are going to use to support that podcast and how you're going to use Instagram to generate a little bit of buzz before that podcast goes. Do you have a format that you follow that you typically will create content around?
Yeah. So again, there's so many different ways you can go about it, but I'm a huge fan of visual elements to enhance and drive traffic. So I use audiograms very often, where I'll take the best snippet of the episode, or where I feel it kind of leaves like a bit of a cliffhanger, provided a bit of value, but definitely leaves some more intrigue. And then I'll share that to my story. And then I also have a Instagram page for the actual show, so I'll share it there as well. And then I'll also make typically some main feed content of very similar to that, worth a little snippet of the video from the actual podcast, providing some intrigue, and then just letting them know a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain of what they could expect if they were to listen to the whole episode. So I think you can definitely go the longer route and tease it far longer in advance, but I typically go the day of, say, go do this now, it's live now. In my thought process there is because there's so many things going on that if I teach something like 3 to 5 days ago, a lot of people are going to forget. So you could do both. You could say this is here in 5 days and then do it again, say it's now live. But I think I found that now is typically the best way to go.
Yeah. So, and that so much of what we do on social, people like to plan in advance. And like, I always teach people when they're doing webinars, don't promote them 3 weeks out, because it becomes an obligation if people
Yes.
register, as opposed to an opportunity.
Yeah.
You promote it 2 or 3 days out and that's it.
I love that perspective.
So that's so it's very similar as far as that. And now you say so the tools that you use, you mentioned Audiogram, which it takes the audio file and it creates a little waveform from it, correct?
Exactly. So there's a few different ways you can go about doing that. I've used different tools in the past. There's this one platform called headliner.app,
Yep.
I believe
It's
is
a
the
Canadian
URL.
company.
Is it really?
I believe so. Yeah, either Headliner or Audiogram, one of the two. I talked to the guys. They're in Toronto. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I did not know that. Even better. So I've used them before. And then some hosts that you use, like my podcast host, Buzzsprout, they actually allow you to make one directly from their platform. I wouldn't say it's as visually appealing, but it also is substantially easier to do because you can do it with a few clicks. So tons of different options to go about it. Really depends on exactly what you're looking for and how much customization you want.
Yeah, and we would be remiss if we didn't say, like, for our podcast, when we're doing it, Liz uses just in video to create the little teaser videos and the promos for it. So that works terrifically in that space as well. Plus,
Absolutely.
you have access then to that entire huge library of B-roll, which, if you've just done an audio podcast, gives you some additional visuals to incorporate. So that's
for sure.
That's a good way to do it. So that's great. So then once you've then create, so that gives me an idea of the kind of the content roadmap that you would end up using. Let's get a little bit more into what's happening with the viral reach of Facebook or of Instagram, because I feel like we've read this book before.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the nature of these platforms, is that they're going to gradually diminish organic reach because their business model runs off of paid advertising. So the more competitive that they make attention, the higher premium is associated with that attention, and you have to go through ads. So much like I said, that your audience, typically only 10% of your audience will now see your stories. That used to be a lot higher in the past. So they've been dwindling it down because they want you to run paid campaigns. So I always advocate people experimenting with paid story ads, because you can do so at an incredibly low budget and experiment with different things and optimize the best creative, like make a few different videos within InVideo, see what works best, change 1-2 different things at a time, conduct split tests, because you can do so at a very, very low price point. And when you find something that works, it's very, very valuable.
Do you only spend money when on your ads for things that you have a call to action on, or do you use it to like drive traffic do you run paid traffic for your podcast?
Yeah, so I haven't done a ton of that. I've used my organic means at the time being, but you can absolutely do that. And there's one, I made an entire video on the subject, but there is kind of like a loophole within the Facebook advertising system where you can optimize a story ad for pay per click, meaning that you only pay for people that actually click the link, which is the swipe up. And then if you drive with the creative, which you can easily make within video, and you drive them instead to go to your bio and visit your profile, you can basically get free profile visits because you sent them there. They don't view that as a click. So everybody who goes there, as long as they don't come back and then click, you're not paying for them. So you can get a ton of profile visits, which if your content's on point, you can easily convert a good chunk of those and you're not paying for them.
Except the algorithm will quickly realize that people Facebook or Instagram's not making money from it. So at that point,
it's been around for a while, so I don't know. It seems like they might be okay with it, but yeah, absolutely, they'll likely take it away.
Skeptical. They'll figure it out. You shouldn't have mentioned it. Don't mention the hack.
I know. I made a whole video on the subject that has like 200,000 views, so I'm sure someone from Facebook's seen it.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's get into into the weeds of the content a little bit, and we asked you to prepare, kind of come up with your top ideas, like to spark our imagination. The top instances of people using stories now. So share some of those with me.
Yeah, for sure. So I think any business should have an opportunity and advocate people to shout them out when they do have a good customer experience, and then you always want to pay back the love that's given to you and share that to your story. A big reason why you want to do that as well is because if you go to pretty well anybody's Instagram page at this point, you can see the story highlights. So you could make a huge catalog of social proof for any potential customer in the future by cataloging all of your positive testimonials in one place. And it really just drives a point of emphasis when that many people are seeing positive things. Not to mention that anybody who shouts you out on their story, you're getting exposed for free to a ton of the people within their lives, and you're getting that endorsement from those people. So that's a no-brainer. That's super easy content that all you really have to do is say, oh, by the way, we're on Instagram. We'd love if you shouted us out. And people who have a good experience will definitely do that. Another idea for content is really just behind the scenes. So I know a lot of people feel like their business isn't all that exciting or anything of that nature, but any opportunity that you have to really show your personality is something that I always advocate. So even if you say you're an accountant and like that's not exactly like a sexy or glamorous business, your ability to show your personality behind that, people at the end of the day, they buy from people, whether it be a product or a service. So if you can be the accountant that they like, whether you're funny, you're sarcastic, whatever it may be, and you bring that home and you can share the company culture, I think that's another super powerful tool there. And then anything else that's going on that you think could provide value to your audience, because it is real time, like you said. So say if you're in real estate and they just changed the first time home buyers rules or whatever, if you can be the first one to share that, a ton of people are going to share your story to other people to spread the word. So that way you can get a ton of organic reach and shares simply because you got on it quickly and you provided that value first. So those are three just off the top of my head that you could definitely use. And then in terms of planning out ahead of time, it's really just things to enhance the know, like, trust factor. So how can you get people to know you? And then how can you like them by sharing who you are, what your whole business is all about? And then how do they trust you? It leads back into that testimonial piece. And then any other thing that you can do to really enhance that you're the destination for that product or service.
Now, is it a concern when you do a lot of stories? Like I checked out your Facebook profile or your Instagram profile.
Yep.
And you've got a lot of the millennial I love my selfies photos, which is there. But I imagine a lot of your best stuff.
Yeah.
I don't see because it was in stories.
Yeah.
So do you get more engagement from your regular posts, or is it a concern that if you're so engaged in stories that people coming to your profile aren't necessarily going to get the same picture of the depth that you offer? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. So that's where I think the value of highlights comes into play. Because if you do feel, like you said, that some of your best stories, you want to put them in one place for anybody that may come to your page. So for example, say I wanted to give because sometimes I'll share just like a random Instagram tip right on my story. I could very easily compile an Instagram highlight saying that this is all the stories I've made about Instagram tips. So you can store them on there, and then it no longer becomes a 24-hour window. It becomes a lifetime window.
Does it become a regular post in Instagram then? So
it doesn't get posted to your main feed, but when they come and visit your profile, it'll always be accessible to them by clicking your story highlight.
Story highlights. So that's what. Do a lot of people do that? Do you get a lot of traction in there?
Yeah, a lot of people use story highlights for exactly what you said, because if something is super, super valuable and there is a longer lifespan than that 24 hours, why wouldn't you leave it up there, right? For some people coming towards you, because typically, say you are doing a traffic campaign where you're trying to get people to come visit your profile. These are all different things that are trying to check those subliminal boxes that they're looking for, right? Just to prove that you know what you're talking about, to provide a reason for them to stick around. So definitely keep your best bits in story highlights, because that changes the lifespan of that content.
And so in those again, I think we keep coming back to that intimacy, the fact that that you're giving them really quick, maybe not polished, but personal attention. So I guess that even more so than with your normal posts, it's really important to pay attention to the comments.
Yeah. So
and respond reasonably quickly.
Yeah. So the difference being, because there isn't like a public comment platform, it's even better because it'll be a direct, when they reply, it goes directly to you in a DM. So absolutely, that is an exceptional opportunity to really build relationships. And you do want to be on there as quickly as possible, largely because if you get back quickly, people are always blown away by the fact that you did that. And it provides a greater opportunity to really build the relationship, which I keep going back to because it's what social is all about. And another way to take that even to the next level is I love that Instagram has incorporated voice memos. So whenever people send me a DM, I reply with a voice memo, and people are always blown away by that, because so few people are giving that personal touch. And a lot of people who are in the world of social media, like they have a team involved with them. So the fact that I'm sending a personal message and they hear my voice, it's different. It's very, very different. And people are always blown away by that. And honestly, it saves me time. I don't have to type anything out. I can just hold it and speak. So leverage all the tools that Instagram provides.
People love. We use an audience response tool when people sign up as a patron on my Patreon account.
Yep.
I use a tool called Bunjuro when I send them a personal video. It just comes up as a task. It literally takes me the length of the video of recording it to thank them.
Exactly.
And the feedback that we get from that personal interaction is astronomical. It's easily the best single little thing that I can do, which is it just takes attention. It doesn't take time. It just takes attention.
100%. And so many people are like, they don't get this from typical businesses or social media interactions. So it's an exceptional opportunity to stand out. And people, they love to talk about good experiences. So it's so often I'll get people who will shout out the fact that I replied to them and say like, wow, I can't believe he replied with a voice memo. And then now that's a ton of other people that are being exposed to the fact that they can get that kind of support from me. And then it just all starts to snowball.
Can you give me an idea how much time you have to carve out each day to manage that?
Yeah. So that definitely has become more and more as obviously I think you need to double down on that while it's manageable and really, really be good at that, because that's going to build your tribe that will allow you to sustain growth and success long term. Once you get to a threshold where it does become over daunting, like I get a ton of DMs every single day now. So what I do is I'll just set aside like 30 minutes to 45 minutes every day where I'll just respond to everybody via voice memo. Wow. And then as soon as I hit that cap, I'm done for the day. And then I'll get to the people the next day. The one thing I will say though is any DM request, you can only see it for 30 days. After that, you lose access to see it unless they send you another one. So try to get back to people within 30 days.
30 days. Yeah, well, that's not exactly concierge service if you're waiting 30 days to get back. So
no.
Yeah, I certainly with it, but if you're responding within a day, the expectations, you're blowing people away.
Absolutely. If you get back within a day, because oftentimes they'll open the message because they understand it's not going to your regular DM box. Like it's going to a request folder with a ton of people don't even look at. So if you get back within a day, that blows them away. Absolutely. And there's one point that I try to drive home on this subject all the time is that if someone's DMing you, it's almost a certainty that you're not the first person like that they've DM'd, but you can absolutely be the first one that responds. And that creates such a unique relationship that has staying power, has longevity, and it spreads.
So I sense that there is a self-fulfilling prophecy to this. If you dedicate to doing a couple of stories and you get one out a day, which will, by their very nature, eventually start to create some interaction, start to create people commenting back. Then the fact that you're doing it is your people are going to inform you what has traction, because you're going to post once and all of a sudden you're going to get 5 comments, whereas you posted 3 days before, or 3 previous days and there was no comments. So yes, that's going to now lead you to what your community is interested in. So you're going to post more content like that, which is going to generate more interaction, which is going to create more confidence, which then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact that by just the fact of doing it, you will get better at it and you will start to hit the mark more effectively.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'm in social media and in life in general, I'm a huge advocate of testing different things and figuring different things out. And this provides you a daily opportunity to do that. And exactly like you said, that you actually see the people that respond because it'll go right to you.
Yeah.
But Instagram provides you tons of different analytics in terms of how much time people spent on it, how they interacted with it, how many people shared it. Like there's so many resources at your disposal that can speak to if it resonates with people. And I think that's a lens that you should create content through, is what is going to get people intrigued, what might get them to respond or share, because all of those different things allows this whole chain to get moving far faster.
I got a good buddy, Brian Fanzo, who I don't know if Brian's been on with us, but he's got a podcast called Just Press the Damn Button. And it's all about just getting started. And this seems to me to be a classic case of because I don't do it, it just seems like this massive hurdle. But I'm pretty sure that if I just did it,
yes,
it would very quickly become second nature, and I would start to see the value. And so that's there. I mean, there's so many proponents. It's obvious that that's the case. So that's good.
Yeah, 100%. And I get this question all the time, like, "Oh, how are you comfortable with just like holding a phone in front of your face?" And the answer was, I wasn't. So like I went through the ones where it was like painfully awkward, but you do it so often, like anything, the first time you try something, it's awkward. You're going to fall, you're going to stumble, but that's the way that you figure out that it's all going to be all right. And you just got to keep doing it to get better at it.
And to be fair, that's part of the beauty and trust. If you trust your community, if you trust your audience enough to look the fool a little bit while you figure something else out, those are the people that are going to stick with you. Okay, so you've given me one golden tip, which is that voice response to the direct messages.
Yeah.
So do you have some other tips that people hacks that you use that people can that people can really embrace?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of just wrote down quickly like my top 7 tips. And so the first one is basically reiterating exactly what you just said, is don't think too much, because the analysis paralysis can very easily set in. And with the nature of the fact that it is only a 24-hour window, allow that to be freeing. Allow yourself to try and experiment, because even if it doesn't go as well as you want it to, first of all, it's not that big of a deal. 2, it's only there for 24 hours unless you put it as a highlight, and you're only going to do that if it worked out really well for you. So don't think too much. Second one would be really think know, like, trust. So what are essentially those become like your 3 content pillars. And I think that should be paramount across all of Instagram, but specific to stories as well. Is this piece of content going to help them know me, like me, or trust me? If the answer is yes, get it out there. Absolutely. And then, did you have a question?
No, I like that.
Okay, awesome. And then, so then the third thing would be to explore and experiment. So if there's anything that you even remotely think that you want to do or share, do it, and then use the feedback to dictate whether you do that again or you don't. This is an experimentation piece, and the best that you go about doing that and experimenting like crazy, you're going to have the most insight possible to really moderate your content with the best strategy possible for increased exposure, share, all of that good stuff. So experiment with any new features, everything like that. You want to just constantly be trying and showing your personality and all that good stuff.
And then your intuition will start to take over.
It absolutely becomes second nature, and you post something and you're going to be like, oh, I know this is going to go like this. And so often it does, because you've done it so many times. The fourth tip would be get people to engage. That's what it's really all about. So how do you do that? You create things that are intriguing, that spark debate, all of these different things that can get people to actually interact. That's what Instagram loves. And the more that you do that, the more you're going to show up in people's feeds. So get to doing that. And Instagram makes it very, very easy for you to do that as well with the features that they put within stories. Like there's polls, you can ask questions, you can do all sorts of things from the features that are already there that people can respond to in real time. And all of those things are tracked by Instagram. And all of those feed and speak to the level of relationship that you have, which is only going to help you out. And like I literally did a poll today, and not to mention, like, as a business owner, it's such a valuable tool that you can get real-time questions or feedback from your audience just from posting out a story. So for example, I'm working on a series on my channel about specific to YouTube. So I literally just said, I'm like, why am I spending all this time thinking about what people want? Why don't I just ask them? So I just said, what do you want to learn about YouTube? What are you struggling with? So then I'm making content that's actually in demand. So you can do that with whatever kind of business that you're in. So I'd say definitely do that, get people to engage. And then the fifth is kind of an extension of that, is to use any new features to get that little bump up in reach.
That's a really important thing. So you really have to you really have to stay on top of the platform to do that. Don't get comfortable.
Yes, exactly. But Instagram does a great job of this as well, is that they'll tell you when there is a new feature. So it'll show up on everybody's feed. There'll be a story from Instagram saying, we just added this feature, go ahead and use it. So they do make that quite easy. One that's not technically a story feature per se, but it is kind of an extension of stories, and you access it from the same side of the platform, is Reels. So Reels is Instagram's answer to TikTok. So that's their newest, latest feature. So hop on that as quickly as you can. It's very similar format. It's a maximum of 15 seconds, but you can incorporate the sounds that made TikTok so popular. I've made a few Reels, and the level of organic reach there is huge, because they're doing what they do with any new feature. They're showing it in as many people's faces as possible to make it as normal as possible, just to reward the people that are doing that. And if you go to your Explore page right now, the first thing is a Reel, and it takes up like half your screen. So you can't escape Reels right now, because they don't want you to be able to.
And so okay, so that's the current hot one. Everybody do a Reels. I saw some comments about somebody says they've just done their first Reels and we're wondering what they should be doing with it. Go on.
Yeah, so Reels is a tool right now. I will say this, definitely needs some work. Like it's not TikTok. There's definitely some limitations from a user perspective of what you can do and what you can create with it. But if they're going to give you an increased reach, figure out a way that you can use that as part of your strategy and actually get that going. So for me, I've done a few different videos about social media and stuff like that, but it has to be very, very micro because it is only a 15-second window. And you realize how quick that is when you actually try to make a video. You're like, wow, 15 seconds is really fast. So definitely do that. But for example, I just went on there and it was
the problem is those things drive me crazy because you'll take way longer to make it in 15 seconds. It'll take you like a half an hour to finally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely. So with that, I'd say get creative and use the elements you have at your disposal. So if you can,
what's a big help there is using
video.
in video. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you can see the timeline and you know what you've got, and yeah, you can pack it in.
100%. And that's actually exactly what I was going to get to, is that use the different tools that you have. So if you could use a motion graphic within video or text within video, that can like limit what you have to say. That's basically buying you more time. So I'd say definitely use that. Get on Reels because, for example, I literally just put out a video using one of their stupid little features. It was into corn, literally a cob of corn. And I just said, hey guys, I know this is corny, but go real. And even a ton of reach. And I was like, wow, that speaks to how they're viewing this. So definitely get on it as soon as possible. And then I got 2 more tips here. So 6 would be just to be real. So be you. And I know it feels like you're playing a character when you are uncomfortable in front of camera. It does feel kind of strange or weird. But the only way to develop that comfortability in front of that camera is through just doing it repetitively. So the more that you do it, the more you'll become natural and the more people will resonate with it because they do feel like they know you. And then the 7th tip is story ads. I cannot stress that enough. I think it's one of my favorite paid tools in social in general, just because of how they're viewed. People, I would say they're not as desensitized to it as they are within ads within their main feed because they so quickly scroll through it. Whereas I think you have a lot more of an opportunity to stop someone when they see a story ad than you do in a main feed. And also they're typically less expensive as well. So I'd say get into that, using video to make some awesome ads. I actually just released a video about how I would go about making an ad within video and trying to hit those subconscious things to get people to actually perform my CTA. So definitely do that and try out story ads. You can experiment with like $1 or $5 a day to see what works.
Those are all great tips. But I always like to ask, when you go to somebody's profile, what drives you crazy? When do you look at it and you go, why are you doing that? That is such a colossal error. What drives you crazy about people doing it right now?
I would say to a degree, at times people try to create this like false reality that like everything's always perfect. I think that's doing yourself a bit of a disservice. Like sometimes when I record a story,
the influencer stuff, where they're taking pictures of themselves on a beach when they're really in their backyard type stuff.
Exactly, because that's not real. I think that people are getting a far better BS radar as we go on with social media. People are becoming they're a lot smarter. Like they can smell this stuff out and they don't resonate with it. So I think being organic,
like the picture of you on the private jet going, I'm on my way.
Exactly. What good does it do for you, especially if you're a business owner? Like I don't see the value there. I think that it's better to be real, organic. For example, like some of my stories, I'll stutter or I'll misspeak, and I'll leave it in there just to say like, hey, like I don't think that I'm perfect. Like I'm just saying this. I want to be organic and be real, and people really, really resonate with that. And actually, I did that where I made mention to the fact that I misspoke, and tons of people responded like, wow, I can't believe you actually posted this. That's awesome that you don't care, kind of thing, about like trying to be perfect. So I think being real, being organic is the most paramount thing, and stop trying to make it look like everything's perfect because that's just not real.
And it's so hard for people to do. I don't know why. I think people need to be able to laugh at themselves a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And I actually talk a lot this, but when I teach people about YouTube and I talk about my channel, which is quite successful, and I'm a bumbling fool on my channel. I make mistakes all of the time, and I misspeak, and I will say, I don't think that's right, and then I won't even edit that out.
Yeah.
But the reason is because you have to look at yourself through the eyes that others look through you. We look through ourselves with far less grace. We were far more critical of ourselves than anybody. And the only time people feel uncomfortable with you is when you are uncomfortable.
Yes.
And we're more
Absolutely.
empathetic than we are judgmental as an audience. And you have to trust your audience. And you know what? And if you can't trust them, are they worth having as an audience?
Yes, that's a big thing that I struggle with too, is stop operating from a place of fear and understanding that if someone doesn't resonate with them and you are being real, organic, and yourself, they're not the person for you. And this world is so large that your customer base is out there.
I'm going to call you out on this, Ben, because I've looked at your Instagram feed. You're a good-looking guy, and all of your photos you look good in. So I want you to work on that, okay, buddy?
Okay, fair enough. I'll try to get some more bad ones. But if you go through my tagged photos, there's some that aren't so great.
Okay, I'll have to. I'm actually not willing to do quite that much research, but I'll trust you on it.
Fair enough. I appreciate it.
So the thing is, so the key is authenticity. That's it. And when you see people that are unauthentic, that's what drives you crazy.
It definitely does, because speaking back to people's BS radar, people are to smell stuff, and not to mention, like, more and more things are getting exposed of people that's not real, and people don't resonate with that. They don't want to see it because it's not real. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why some big influencers or people with large followings, they struggle with getting engagement on their posts, because they've built themselves up to this untouchable figure people can't relate to. How would they interact or engage with it? It's intimidating. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice when you project that false image of perfection.
So we'll summarize things today with Instagram stories, primarily recognizing that they are a nurturing engine in the story in their normal form.
Yep.
That trust your audience, trust yourself, just press the damn button, as Fanzo says, start doing them, and then let your audience lead you to the promised land by their reaction.
100%.
Pay attention to them, though. Honor their content, honor their investment in you. If they comment back to you, you get back to them, but use a tool like the direct messaging voice memos to help save you time, but also really create an extra level of engagement. I think a lot of people will recognize the value in that.
Yes.
Whatever content comes, there's no hard and fast rules for length, for style of content. Use the tools that you have available. If you are an in-video user, there's probably no better tool because it gives you so much flexibility. But just don't sweat it, and don't overthink it.
That was an exceptional summary for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's Ben. Where do you want people to? Do you want them to follow you on Instagram? I know your YouTube channel's rocking. Where do you want them to follow you?
They can go wherever they want. So on YouTube, it's Ben Leavitt. I drop a ton of stuff on there in social media strategy and things of that nature. If you're going to connect me personally, the best way to do that is on Instagram, because like I said, I do reply to all my DMs. So if you're looking to ask a personal question or like a question about social, that's the best way to do it for sure.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to send you to the green room. I hope people follow you. I'm looking, maybe some point we'll actually be able to get together in person, since we are both in Canada. Are you going to watch hockey in there now that the Leafs are out? Or are you going to stop?
No, I'm actually a Penguins fan, so my heart was broken even earlier. So
by Montreal of all things. Oh,
I know, devastating.
To our international audience, we have hockey back in North America right now, but my Vancouver Canucks are still in. They will be out shortly, but they're in for now, which is very exciting for us.
We'll see.
We have a young and exciting team. Ben, thank you so much. You've opened my eyes. I wish you a lot of luck. I think you got a great career in front of you. Just make sure that you look ugly occasionally. Do that.
Fair enough.
Will do,
Steve. Thanks so much today. I promise to. I promise.
Okay, good stuff. That is Ben Leavitt. Yeah, I think you want to follow him. He definitely has an awful lot going for him. I enjoyed that conversation, and his videos on YouTube are on point. We want to check them out. What do we have coming up next week? Next week, one of my faves, Amy Landino is going to be joining us at Creating the Brand in You. Amy has pivoted multiple times. I've known Amy for maybe 9 years now. She started out as a person that taught people how to create little videos on YouTube. And now she is a lifestyle leader. She has a wonderful community. She has reinvented herself multiple times, and she understands branding like nobody. So we are going to be diving deep into the branding waters with Ms. Amy Landino. I can assure you, your time will be well spent should you join us next week. If not, the recordings are always available at nvideo.io/you-and-me. My thanks to Ben. My thanks to the entire team at InVideo. Till next time, I'm Steve Dotto. Have fun storming a castle.